The head, the heart, the novel. This afternoon, I would like to discuss a few more points relating to the real center of the body. A few questions have also been asked about this. Neither the head nor the heart. The novel is the most important and basic center of man's life. Man has developed according to his mind. So the direction, the flow of his life has gone wrong. In the past 5,000 years, we have educated and developed only the mind, only the intellect. The results have been very harmful. The results are that almost every human being is on the verge of madness. A little push and anyone can become mad. The mind is almost on the verge of a breakdown. A little push and the mind can collapse. It is also a surprising thing that in the last half century, within the last 50 years, almost all the greatest thinkers of the world have gone mad. In the West, in the last half century, there has hardly been a single thinker who did not experience some kind of madness. Great poets, great thinkers, great philosophers, great scientists have all been found to be suffering from some kind of madness. And slowly, as more and more of humanity is becoming educated, the symptoms of madness are also reaching the common people. If a new man is to be created, it is absolutely essential to change the center of man's life. If that center is closer to the navel instead of to the head, it will become closer to the life energy. Why do I say this? In this context, it is necessary to understand a few more things. The child which develops in the mother's womb, the fetus which develops, is connected to the mother through the navel. The life energy of the mother flows into the child through the navel itself. The life energy of the mother is a very unknown, a very mysterious flow of electricity which nourishes the whole being of the child through his navel. Then the child separates from the mother. He is born. Immediately after his birth, his navel cord has to be cut and the separation from his mother begins. It is absolutely necessary for the child to separate from the mother. Otherwise, he cannot have any life of his own. The child that has grown in the mother and has been one with her body has to separate from her at a certain point. This separation happens by cutting the connection which he had with her at the navel. When this connection is cut, the life energy that he was getting through the navel stops totally. His whole being starts trembling. His whole being starts asking for that flow of life energy that he was getting until yesterday, but which today has suddenly stopped. The pain that the child feels, his crying after his birth, is not because of hunger. It is because of the pain of being separated and disconnected from the life energy. His connection with the whole life energy has been broken. The source from which he obtained life until yesterday has now gone. The child struggles for life, and if the child does not cry, the doctors or the people who know will say that something has gone wrong. If the child does not cry, it means that he will not be able to survive, that he has not felt that he has been separated from the life energy can mean only one thing, that he is close to his death and will not survive. That is why every effort is made to make the child cry. His crying is absolutely necessary because if he is to live, he should know that he has to separated from the life energy. If he does not know, he is in great danger. And that is when the child tries to reconnect his life energy in a new way, and it is through the mother's milk that his life energy reconnects. So, a child's second connection is with the heart. Together with his mother's heart, his own heart center also slowly starts developing, and the navel center is forgotten. The navel center has to be forgotten because it has been disconnected. It is no longer related to him. And the energy which he was receiving through the navel, he now starts receiving through his mouth. He is again united with the mother. Another circuit is created, and through it he becomes connected. You will be surprised to know that if a child does not get his nourishment through his mother's milk, if he is not fed with his mother's milk, then his life energy remains weak forever. He can be fed milk in other ways also. But if he does not regularly receive the warm touch of his mother's heart, then his life becomes frustrated forever, and the possibility of his living a long life is reduced forever. Those children who are not fed on mother's milk can never attain to much bliss and silence in their lives. The whole younger generation in the West and gradually in India also is becoming filled with great rebellion. The deepest reason for this, the root cause, is that Western children are not being fed on mother's milk. Their respect for life and their relation to life is not full of love. From their very childhood, their life energy has received many shocks and they have become unloving. In those shocks, in the separation from their mother, they have become separated from life itself. Because for a child, there is primarily no other life than his mother. All over the world, wherever women are becoming educated, they do not like to raise children close to them, and the effect has been extremely harmful. In the tribal societies, children are fed on mother's milk for a long time. The more a society becomes educated, earlier the children are weaned from their mother's milk. The sooner the children are separated from their mother's milk, the more difficulty they will have in experiencing peace in their own lives. A deep restlessness will prevail in their lives from the very beginning. On whom will they take revenge for his restlessness? The revenge will be taken on the parents themselves. All over the world, children are taking revenge on their parents. On who else will they take revenge? They themselves do not know what kind of reaction is happening within them, what kind of rebellion is rising within them, what kind of fire is rising within them. But unconsciously, deep within, they know that this rebellion is the result of being separated from their mother too soon. Their hearts know this, but their intellects do not. The result is that they will take revenge on their mothers and fathers. They will take revenge on everyone. The child who is against his mother and father can never be in favor of God. There is no possibility that he can be in favor of God, because the first feelings which rises in him towards God are those which rises towards his mother and father. It is not without reason that all over the world God is called the Father. It is not without reason that God is seen as an image of one's father. If the first experiences in a child's life are of trust, gratitude, and reverence towards his mother and father, only then will the same experiences develop towards God, otherwise not. As soon as he is born, a child is immediately separated from his mother. His second source of life energy is related to the heart of his mother. But at a certain point, a child will have to separate from his mother's milk too. When does the right time come? It does not come as early as we think. Children should remain close to their mother's heart a little longer if their love and heart are to develop rightly throughout their lives. They are forced to separate very early. A mother should not separate the child from her milk. She should allow the child to separate on his own. At a certain point, the child will separate on his own. For the mother to force the separation is just like taking the baby out of the womb after 4 or 5 months, instead of allowing him to come out after 9 months. It is just a harmful. When the mother separates her child from her milk before he himself decides to give it up, because then the second center, the heart center of the child, also does not develop rightly. While we are talking about this, I would like to tell you something more. You will be surprised to hear it. Why is it that all over the world, the part of the woman's body to which men are attracted the most is her breasts? These are all children who are separated very early from their mother's milk. In their consciousness, somewhere deep inside, a desire has remained to be close to a woman's breasts. It has not been fulfilled. There is no other reason. There is no other cause. In tribal societies, in primitive societies, where the children remain close to the mother's breasts long enough, men have no such attraction towards the breasts. But why are your poems, your novels, your movies, your dramas, your pictures all centered around the breasts of women? They have all been created by men who, in their childhood, could not remain close to their mother's breast long enough. That desire is left unfulfilled, and now it starts rising in new forms. Now, pornographic pictures are being created, pornographic books and pornographic songs are being written. Now, men harass women on the streets and throw stones at them. You create all these stupidities and then later on complain about them and try to get rid of them. It is necessary for the child to remain close to his mother's breasts long enough for his mental, his physical and his psychological growth to take place rightly. Otherwise, his heart center will not develop properly. It remains immature, undeveloped, stuck. And when the heart center remains undeveloped, then an impossible thing starts happening. The work which the heart could not complete, which the novel could not complete, the person tries to complete with his mind. This effort brings even more trouble because each center has its own function and each center can only do its own work. It cannot do the work of other centers. Neither the novel nor the mind can do the work of the heart. But as soon as the child is separated from the mother, he has only one center left on which the whole burden falls. This is the mind center. Education, teaching, schools, and colleges are all arranged for the mind center. Then only those people whose minds are more developed and capable make progress in life. A race begins and they attempts to do all the work of their lives with the mind. The love of a person who loves through his mind will be false because the mind has nothing to do with love. Love can only happen through the heart, not through the mind. But the heart center is not properly developed. So you start using the mind. You even think about love. Love has nothing to do with thinking. But in you, even love is expressed as thinking. That is why there is so much sexuality all over the world. Sexuality has only one meaning. It means that the mind is being used to do the work of the sex center. When sex enters the mind, the whole of life is destroyed. And now all over the world, sex has entered the mind. The sex center is the novel. Because the greatest energy of life is sex. Birth comes through it. Life comes through it. The growth of life comes through it. But your novel centers are undeveloped. So you are using other centers for its functions. There is sex in animals, but not sexuality. So even the sex of animals has a beauty, a joy. The sexuality of man is ugly because sex has become a thought process in his mind. He even thinks about sex. A person can eat a meal. Eating is very good. But if someone thinks about food for 24 hours a day, then he is mad. Eating is absolutely right. It is very necessary. One has to eat. But if somebody thinks about food for 24 hours a day, then this person's centers have become disturbed. He is using his mind to do the work of his stomach. But food can neither reach the mind nor can the mind digest it. The mind can only think, can only contemplate. The more the mind thinks about food, the more the work of the stomach will be wasted. It will become disturbed. Try some time to digest your food by thinking. Usually, you eat your food and then you don't think about it. The food enters the stomach by itself and the stomach does the work of digesting it. It is an unconscious center. It does its job. You don't have to think about it, but somebody be alert and think about it. Now the food has reached the stomach. Now it is getting digested. Now this is happening. Now that is happening. You will find that on that day, digesting your food has become impossible. The more thinking enters, the more there will be a disturbance in the unconscious process of the stomach. Such incidents rarely happen with food, except with those people who are obsessed with fasting. If a person fasts for no reason, then gradually food will enter his thoughts. He will not eat, he will fast, but he will be thinking about food. This thinking is even more dangerous than eating. Eating is certainly not dangerous. Food is very essential for life. But to think about food is a sickness. When a person starts thinking about food, all growth in his life will stop. He will be obsessed with these futile thoughts. This is what has happened with sex. We have forcefully shifted it from its proper center, and now we are thinking about it. In this way, you have gradually handed over the functions of the three important centers of your life to the mind. It is just as if a man were to try to listen with his eyes or see with his mouth. It is as if a man were to try to see or taste with his ears. You would say that this man is mad because the eye is the mechanism for seeing and the ear is the mechanism for hearing. The ear cannot see, the eye cannot hear. If you try to do things in this way, the final result will be chaos. In the same way, man has three centers. The center of the life is navel, the center of feeling is the heart, and the center of thinking is the mind. Thinking is the outermost of these three centers. The next center, deeper, is of feeling. And even deeper than that is the center of being. You may think that if the heart stops, then the life energy will also stop. But now scientists have come to the conclusion that although the heart may have stopped beating, the person can continue to live as long as it can be restarted within 6 minutes after the connection with the heart has ended. The life center at the navel remains active for 6 more minutes. If within those 6 minutes the heart can be restarted or a new heart be transplanted, the person can continue to live and there will be no need for him to die. But if life has gone from the navel center, then nothing will be achieved by putting in a new heart. The deepest and most basic center within us is the navel. So, this morning I have talked a little about this navel center. The humanity we have created so far is upside down. It is as if man is standing on his head doing Shirshasana. A person doing Shirshasana is standing on his head with his feet in the air. If a man were to do Sirsasana for 24 hours, what condition would he be in? You can understand. He would certainly go mad. He is already mad. Otherwise, he would not stand on his head for 24 hours. He has no reason to. But in your lives, you have reversed things. You are all standing on your heads. You have made the head of the basis of your lives. Thinking and contemplating have become the basis of life. Authentic religion says that thinking and contemplating are not be the basis of life. To become free from thinking and contemplating, to become thoughtless should be the basis. But you live by thinking and contemplating, and you try to decide how to live your life by thinking and contemplating. Because of this, all your ways have gone astray. By thinking and contemplating, nothing can be decided. Food is not digested by your thinking. Blood does not flow in your veins by your thinking. Your breath does not move by your thinking. Have you ever considered that no significant process of life is related to your thinking? In fact, all the processes of life slow down and become disturbed by too much thinking. That is why every night you need to get lost into a deep sleep so that all your processes can function properly without your hindering them. And then in the morning you can feel fresh again. The very survival of a person who cannot lose himself in deep sleep is at stake, because thinking continuously disturbs the basic process of your life. So, for a little while, nature drowns you in deep sleep. It takes you into a state of unconsciousness to where all thinking stops and your real centers become active. There is also a relationship between your real centers. For example, I can be related to you through your intellect. My thoughts may seem right to you. My thoughts may seem impressive to you. Then there will be an intellectual relationship between you and me. There is a most shallow kind of relationship, but the intellect does not form any deeper relationship. Deeper kinds of relationships are those of the heart, of love, but the relationships of love do not happen through thinking. The relationships of love happen totally unknowingly, without your thinking, and even deeper are the relationships of life which operate through the navel, not through the heart. They are even more indescribable. It is difficult to even define what kind of relationships they are because you do not know this dimension at all. I told you earlier that the life force of the mother activities the navel of the child. A kind of electricity continuously moves between the mother's navel and the child's navel. Then, throughout his life, whenever the child goes near a woman from whom the same kind of electricity as his mother's is flowing, he will unconsciously feel a certain relationship, and he will not understand at all that kind of relationship he has started to feel or why. We have been calling this unknown relationship love. We are not able to recognize it. Hence, we call it blind. Love is blind. Just as the ears cannot see, the tongue cannot smell, and the eye cannot taste. In this way, love is blind because it is rising from levels which are so deep that it becomes difficult for us to understand the reasons for it. With some people, you suddenly feel a strong repulsion. You feel you want to get away from them, and you do not understand the reason for wanting to get away from them. Why do you want to get away from them? If your electricity and their electricity, which is affected by the novel, is opposite, then without understanding it, you will have to get away. It will seem to you as if something is forcing you to leave them. But sometimes you suddenly feel pulling towards a person and you do not understand why. There seems to be no reason for it. Your electricity and his electricity are perceived to be closer, similar, of the same type, connected with each other. That is why you are having such an experience. There are 3 types of relationships in a man's life. There are relationships of the intellect, which cannot be very deep. The relationship between a teacher and a student is this type of relationship. There are relationships of love, which are deeper than the intellect. The relationships between a mother and child, between brothers, between husbands and wife are these types of relationships. They rise from the heart. Then there are even deeper relationships that rise from the novel. I call the relationships that rise from the novel friendships. They go deeper than love. Love can end. Friendship never ends. Tomorrow we may hate the people we love today, but someone who is a friend can never become an enemy. If he becomes an enemy, then know that there was no friendship in first place. The relationships of friendship are of the novel. They are relationships of deeper and unknown realms. This is why Buddha do not tell people to love each other. He talked about friendship. He had a reason for doing this. He said that there should be friendship in your life. Somebody even asked Buddha, "Why do you not call it love?" And Buddha replied, "Friendship is a much deeper thing than love. Love can end. Friendship never ends. Love binds. Friendship gives freedom. Love can enslave somebody. It can possess. It can become a master. Friendship does not become someone's master. It does not hold anyone back. It does not imprison. It frees. Love becomes a bondage because the lovers insist that the other should not love anyone else but them. Friendship has no such insistence. One man can have thousands of friends, millions of friends, because friendship is a very vast, very deep experience. It rises from the deepest center of life. That is why friendship ultimately becomes the greatest way to take you towards the divine. Someone who is a friend to all will sooner or later reach to the divine because his relationships are happening with everyone's novel center. And someday or other day, he is bound to become related to the novel center of the universe. One's relationships in life should not be merely intellectual. They should not be only heartful. They should be deeper, they should be of the novel. For example, nowhere in the world is it clear, sooner or later, it will become clear, sooner or later, we will come to know that we are connected with very far away sources of life energy which we cannot see. We know that the moon is very far away, yet it has some unknown influence on the ocean. The ocean rises and falls with the moon. We know that the sun is very far away, but it is connected to life through some invisible threads. The sun rises in the morning, and a revolution happens in life. All that was sleeping, all that was lying as if dead, all that was unconscious starts becoming conscious. Something sleeping starts awakening. Flowers start blossoming. Birds start singing. An invisible flow from the sun leaves its influence on us. There are other more invisible sources of life energy which reach to us in this way. They manage our lives continuously. Not only the sun, not only the moon, not only the stars in the sky, but life itself has a flow of energy which is not seen by us anywhere and which continuously influences and manages our centers. The more receptive our center is, the more this energy can influence our lives. The less receptive our center is, the less this energy will be able to influence it. The sun rises, the flowers blossoms. But if we raise a wall around the flower and the sunlight does not reach the flower, then the flower will not blossom. It will wither away. Behind closed walls, the flower will wither away. The sun cannot forcibly enter and open the flower. The flower has to be willing, it has to be ready. The flower must give the sun the opportunity to come and open it. The sun cannot go in search of a single flower, looking to see which flower is hiding behind a wall so that it can reach it. The sun does not even know about the flowers. It is all an absolutely unconscious life process. The sun rises, the flowers blossom. If a flower is enclosed with a wall, it will not blossom. It will wither away and die. Life energy is flowing from all directions, but those whose novel centers are not open will be deprived of that flower. They will not even know about it. They will not even realize that this energy was there and could have affected them, that there was something hidden within them which could have been opened. They will not even know this. This flowering of the novel, which since ancient days has been called a lotus, is called a lotus because it has the possibility of opening. Some life energy may open it. One needs some preparation for this. For this, our center should be available to the open sky and we should give our attention to it. Then the life energy which is available to us can reach the novel center and give it life. I have told you a few things about it this morning. How will it be possible? How can it become possible for the center of your life to become a blossoming flower so that the invisible energy streams coming from all around can make connections with it? In what way will it happen? There are a few things I have remembered which I will talk to you about now, tonight, so that tomorrow we can talk about the second point. The first point, your breathing. The deeper it is, the more you can become capable of working on your novel and developing it. But you have no idea about it. You do not even know how much you are breathing, or how little you are breathing, or how much is necessary. The more worried you become, the more you become filled with thoughts. You may be unaware that the more loaded and mind becomes, the less the breathing will flow. It becomes obstructed. Have you ever observed that breathing moves in one way when you are angry, and in a different way when you are peaceful? Have you ever observed that if there is an intense sexual desire in the mind, the breathing moves in a particular way? But if the mind is filled with beautiful feelings, then the breathing moves in different way. Have you ever observed that a sick person's breathing moves in a particular way, and a healthy person's breathing moves in a different way? The flow of breath changes moment to moment according to the state of your mind. The contrary is also true. If the flow of your breath is absolutely harmonious, it changes the state of your mind. Either you change the mind and the breath changes, or you change the breath and it affects the mind. For the person who wants to develop and influence his life centers, the first thing is rhythmic breathing. While sitting, standing, or moving, his breath should be so harmonious, so peaceful, so deep, that he should be able to experience a different music, a different harmony of the breath day and night. If you are walking on the road not doing any work, you will feel very blissful. If you breathe deeply, silently, slowly, and harmoniously, there will be two benefits. As long as breathing remains harmonious, your thinking will become less. There will be almost no thoughts. If the breathing is absolutely, even the thoughts in the mind will totally disappear. The breathing affects the thoughts in the mind very deeply and to a very great extent. It costs nothing to breathe properly, and you do not have to spend any extra time to breathe properly. Sitting in a train, walking on the road, sitting at home, if the process of breathing deeply and peacefully continues, then within a few days this process will become spontaneous. You will not even be aware of it. The breath will move deeply and slowly by itself. The deeper and slower the flow of breath, the more your navel center will develop. Every time you breathe, the breath hits the navel center. If the breath goes in and out from above the navel center, then slowly the center becomes idle. It becomes weak because the breath does not hit it. In the old days, people found some clues, a formula for breathing, but man is so unintelligent that he starts repeating the formulas without seeing their meaning, without even understanding them. It is just like scientists find a formula for water H2O. They say that with the combination of both hydrogen and oxygen, water is created. 2 atoms of hydrogen and the 1 atom of oxygen make the formula H2O. Now, if a person starts repeating H2O, H2O in the same way As people are repeating Ram, Ram, Om, Om, we will say he is mad, because what can happen by repeating a formula? The formula is only an indication of something. If you understand what it is about, then the formula is significant. You can often hear people sitting and repeating the sound of Om. They do not know that Om is a formula like H2O. There are 3 letters in Om. They are A, U, M. Perhaps you may not have noticed that if you close your mouth and say A loudly inside, you will feel the sound of A resounding in your mind. A is an indication of the head center. If you say U inside, then you will feel the sound of U resounding within your heart. U is an indication of the heart. And if you say M inside, the third part of Om, then you will feel it resounding near your navel. A, U and M are 3 sounds indicating the sounds of the head, the heart and the navel. If you say M, you will feel the whole force of it on the navel. If you say U, you will feel the force going to the heart. If you say A, then A will resound in the head and disappear. This is a formula. One has to go from A to U and from U to M. Nothing will happen by just repeating Om. So those processes which take us in this direction, from A to U and from U to M, are the ones one must pay attention to. Deep breathing is the first process. The deeper the breath, the more harmonious, the more in tune it becomes, the more the life energy within you will start arising, will start radiating from your navel. Your navel will become an alive center. Within a few days, you will start feeling that there is energy flowing out from your navel, and you will also feel that there is energy coming in. You will find that a very living, a dynamic center is starting to develop near your navel. As soon as you feel this, many more experiences will start happening around this center. Psychologically, breath is the first thing to develop the navel center. Psychologically, certain qualities are helpful to develop the navel. I told you in the morning about the fearlessness. The more fearful a man is, the less close he will be able to reach to the navel center. The more fearless a man is, the closer he will reach to the navel. So, in educating children, it is my essential suggestion that one should never tell a child, even by mistake, that he shouldn't go outside because it is dark. You are not aware that you are harming this navel center forever. Certainly, tell the children to go wherever there is darkness. Tell them that the darkness is calling them. If the river is flooded, don't tell the children not to jump into it, because you do not know that the child who dares to enter a flooded river is developing his navel center. The navel center of a child who does not jump into the river becomes weak and feeble. If children want to climb mountains, then let them. If children want to climb trees, let them. Let them go wherever they can experience adventure and fearlessness. Even if some children die each year climbing mountains, jumping into rivers, or climbing trees, it does not matter at all. Because if all the children of a community become filled with fear and become lacking in fearlessness, then although the whole community may seem to be alive, it is actually dead. In India, this misfortune has happened. We talk a lot about religion, but we know nothing about courage. We do not know that without courage there is no religion whatsoever. Because without courage, the central element of life remains undeveloped. One needs courage, so much courage, that one is able to stand and face death. In India, there is so much talk about religion, but our fear of death has no limit. Actually, the contrary should be the case. People who know the soul, who recognize the soul, should not be afraid of death at all, because death does not exist. But while you talk a lot about the soul, you are very afraid of death, immensely afraid. Perhaps you talk about the soul because you are afraid of death. By talking about the soul, you get some consolation that you will not die, that the soul is immortal. Perhaps you talk because of this fear. This seems to be the reality. Fearlessness should be developed. Immense fearlessness should be developed. So, whenever there are opportunities in life to face danger, they should be welcomed. Somebody once asked Natish K, how can one develop one's personality? He gave a very peculiar maxim, one which you could not have expected. He said, live dangerously. Live dangerously if you want to develop your personality. But you think that the more you live in security, the better off you will be. There is a bank balance, a house, the police and the military are there. There is no fear. You can have a quiet life in all this. You do not realize that in making these arrangements and these comforts, you have almost become dead. There is no point in living anymore, because the only meaning in life is to live dangerously. There is no other meaning in living. Corpses are absolutely secure because now they cannot even die. Now nobody can kill them. Their graves are absolutely safe. An emperor built a palace. Because of security, he made only one door to the palace. The neighboring emperor came to see it. He liked it very much, and he said, I would also like to build a similar palace. This is very secure. No enemy can enter it. There was only one door, and there were great security arrangements at the door. When the emperor departed, the host emperor gave him a send-off, and a big crowd gathered. While departing, the emperor said, this has made me very happy. I will also make such a palace. There was an old man standing near him, and he started laughing. The emperor asked, why are you laughing? The old man said, if you make such a palace, then don't make the mistake that he has made. What mistake? Asked the emperor. Don't make even one door. Close all the doors. Then you will be absolutely safe, replied the old man. The emperor said, then it will become a grave. The old man said, this palace has also become a grave. Wherever there is only one door and all kinds of security, and there is no danger from anywhere, it is a grave. You think that the absence of fear is fearlessness. This is a mistake. Fearlessness is not the absence of fear. In the presence of fear, Fearlessness is a totally different thing which happens within. It is not the absence of fear. Fearlessness is the total absence of fear with the courage to face it. But your lives are such that this does not develop. My suggestion to you is this: by praying in the temples, you will not reach closer to the divine. But when the adventures of life and fearlessness are inviting you, when dangers are calling you, if you go, you will certainly reach closer to the divine. In danger, in insecurity, the center which is hidden within you, which is sleeping, awakens and becomes alert. In danger, in insecurity, the center feels a challenge, and in this situation, the navel center can develop. In the old days, sannyasins accepted this insecurity. They left the home, but not because the home was wrong. Later, stupid people started thinking that sannyasins left the home because it was wrong, that they left their wives and children because they were a bondage. This idea is wrong. The sannyasins simply wanted to drop security. He wanted to enter the state of insecurity where there was no support, no friends, no acquaintances, no one to be called one's own. Wherever there might be sickness, death, dangers, poverty, he wanted to enter this state of insecurity. So, someone who chose insecurity was a sannyasin. But later on, sannyasins created a great security for themselves, more than the people living in society. A person living in society has to earn his living, but a sannyasin doesn't. He is even more secure. He simply receives it. He gets clothes, he gets a place to live. He does not have to do without anything. The only difference is that he does not even have to earn it. The difficulty and insecurity of earning money is also finished. Someone else manages it for him. Someone or other makes the arrangements for him. So, sannyasin becomes like a person tied to a peg. And this is why a sannyasin cannot be courageous. A sannyasin seems to be a person without any strength in this world. He cannot show even a little courage. One sannyasin says, I am a Jaina. One sannyasin says, I am a Hindu. Another sannyasin says, I am a Mohammedan. Can a sannyasin be a Hindu, a Jaina, or a Mohammedan? A sannyasin belongs to everybody, but there is a fear in saying, I belong to everybody, because to say that may mean that the sannyasin belongs to nobody. Then those to give him food, who makes houses for him, may no longer be friendly to him. They will say, you do not belong to us. You belong to everybody, so you can go to everybody. We will make arrangements for you only if you are Jaina monk, or we will make arrangements for you if you are a Mohammedan monk. We are Mohammedans, so we will make arrangements only for Mohammedan monks. So the monk will say, I am a Mohammedan, or he will say, I am a Hindu. This is a church for security. This is a church for a new house. They have left the old house and now they want to a new house. So these days, the situation is such that those who are clever, who want to good house, do not make a house at all. They simply become sannyasins. They say to others, "You are not wise. You make your own house. You commit sins, and maybe you will go to hell." And they get these people to build a house for them. They live in it. They enjoy the thoughts of going to heaven. They earn virtue and they escape from all troubles of life. So sannyasins have created a security of their own. But basically, the meaning of sannyas is a long to live in danger. Basically, it means that there is no shelter, no companion, no certainty about tomorrow. Christ was walking past a garden. He said to his friends, "Do you see these flowers which have blossomed in the garden? They do not know whether the sun will rise tomorrow or not. They do not know whether they will get water tomorrow or not. But today they have blossomed in their joy." Man alone makes arrangements today for tomorrow, and then he makes arrangements for the day after tomorrow. There are people who make arrangements for how their grave should be built. Those who think they are wise create memorial beforehand in which to keep their dead bodies. You all make arrangements and you completely forget that when a person makes arrangements for tomorrow, he kills today while making those arrangements. Then tomorrow he will again make arrangements for the next day, and he will kill that day also. Every day he will make arrangements for the following day, and he will go on killing the present day, and there is nothing else but the present day. Tomorrow never comes. Whenever it comes, it is today. He kills today for tomorrow. This is the nature of a mind looking for security. It kills today for tomorrow. It sacrifices the present for the future. And the future never comes. Tomorrow never comes. In the end, he finds that his whole life has slipped out of his hands. The person who dares to live today and does not even bother about tomorrow is living in danger. Because tomorrow there may be danger. There is no certainty about anything. It is possible that the wife who is loving today may not be loving tomorrow. The husband who is loving today may not be loving tomorrow. There is no certainty about tomorrow. Today there is money. Tomorrow there may be no money. Today there are clothes. Tomorrow there may be no clothes. In the person who totally accepts this insecurity about tomorrow and waits for tomorrow, faces whatever tomorrow belongs, a center starts developing which I call the novel center. Within him a power, an energy, a potency arises. Within him a base arises, like a pillar of courage on which his life can grow. So on the physical level breathing is needed, and on the psychological level courage is needed. These two things are basically necessary for the development of the novel center. If there is something else, or if you have some questions in your mind relating to this, I will talk to you about it tonight. But first, before this present session is over, I must tell you one more thing. 700 or 800 years ago in Japan, they tried to create a different type of person. They called him a samurai. He was a monk and also a warrior. This is very strange. What is the relation between a monk or a warrior? The temples in Japan are very strange. In these temples, where they teach meditation, They also teach jujitsu and judo and the art of wrestling, swordsmanship and archery. If we were to go there and see, we would be surprised. What is the need to use a sword in a temple of meditation? And teaching judo, jujitsu, and wrestling, how do they related to meditation? In front of meditation temples, there are symbols of swords. It is a very strange affair, but there was a reason for it. Meditators in Japan slowly come to realize that if there is no possibility in a seeker's life to develop courage and strength, then in that seeker only the mind will exit. His other deeper centers do not develop. He can only become a scholar. He cannot become a saint. He can become a so called knowledgeable person. He can know the Gita, the Quran, the Bible, and the Upanishads. He can memorize them like a parrot. This is possible, but he has no experience of life. So, a meditator was taught how to use a sword and a bow and arrow. Recently, one of my friends returned from Japan. Someone there had given him a statue and he was very much troubled by it. He could not understand what kind of statue it was. When he returned, he came to me with the statue and said, "Somebody has presented me with this statue, so I have brought it here because I have been wondering again and again what kind of a statue it is. What is its meaning?" It was a statue of a samurai warrior. I told him, "You cannot understand because for thousands of years we have been created a misunderstanding. The statue was a warrior with a naked sword in his hand. The side of the face, which was on the same side as the hand with the sword, was shining with the reflection of the sword. His face on that side looked like Arjuna's face might have done. In his other hand, there was a lamp, and the light of the lamp was falling on the other side of his face. His face on that side looked like a face that Buddha, Mahavira, and Christ might have had. There was a sword in one hand and a lamp in the other hand. You cannot understand it because you think that he should have either a sword or a lamp in his hand. How can both of these things be in the hands of one man?" So my friend was not able to understand it. He said to me, "I am very puzzled. What is it all about?" I told him that the lamp can only be in the hands of a person who also has a shining sword in his other hand. For him, it is not a question of using the sword. Only weak people, fearful people use a sword. A person whose whole life becomes like a sword does not need to use it. There is no need for him to use it because his whole life is a sword. So, do not think that because a person has a sword in his hands, he will use it, that he will hurt or kill somebody. A person only kills when he is afraid of being killed himself. Otherwise, he will never kill. A violent person is really only a fearful person. In reality, a sword can only be held in the hands of a non-violent person. In fact, a person can only be non-violent when he himself becomes a sword, otherwise not. The lamp of peace will not be of benefit to a man in whose being a sword of courage has been born, in whose being a sword of energy and strength has been born. So, on the one hand, the personality should be filled with total strength, and on the other hand, with total peace. Only then an integrated personality, a wholeness, can arise. Up to now, there have been two kinds of situations in the world. People have either held lamps in their hands and become absolutely weak. If somebody blew out their lamp, they could not even stop him or ask why he was blowing out the lamp. They would simply think that when this fellow goes away, then we will light the lamp again, and if he does not go away, then we will remain in darkness. Either way, there is no problem. So why take the trouble to resist? So on the one hand, in one situation, there are people who have a lamp in their hands but have no strength to protect it. India has become one such weak country. It has become a weak country because we did not develop the real centers of our life energy. We simply stay with the mind, memorizing the Gita, the Upanishads, and the sayings of Mahavira, and went on making commentaries on them. The master and disciple went on sitting and talking about thousands of useless things which have no concern with life. Our whole country, our whole race has become weak, without any strength. It has become impotent. And on the other hand, there are people who simply stopped caring about the lamp, who took up the sword and started using it. Then, because they did not have a lamp, they could not see in the darkness who they were killing. They did not know whether they were killing their own people or others. So they just went on killing. And if someone started talking about lightening the lamp, they said, "Stop talking nonsense. The time spent in lightening the lamp can be spent in using the sword. And also, one more sword can be made with the metal with which we would make the lamp. So, why waste all that oil and all that metal? Life is all about using the sword." People in the West are using their swords in darkness, and people in the East are sitting, "There will be a lamp, but no sword." And both are crying. The whole world is crying. A right man has not been created. The right man is both a living sword and a lamp of peace. I call somebody a religious man only if both of these things have arisen in him. Today we have talked on these first points. It is good if many questions about this arise in your minds. They should arise. If you write down those questions, then I can answer you tonight. Then tomorrow we will begin to discuss some other points. So today, ask questions only about what we have discussed today and not about nothing else. Tomorrow we will talk about these other points, and then you can ask questions about them. The day after tomorrow we will talk about more points, and then you can ask questions about them. But today it will be better if you ask questions about whatever I have just talked about. If you have any questions which are not concerned with the talks of these 3 days, you can ask them on the last day, and we can talk about them then.